So God laid on my heart many weeks ago about doing a sermon about good and evil. And I had no idea, although with 254 mass shootings this year, I guess I should have had an idea that this weekend, or this week, there would have been 3 mass shootings. And then to talk about good versus evil. So I want to share with you a video first, and then we'll talk some more. How many of you got goosebumps in that? Or what do you call them? I don't remember. How many of you, honestly, you don't have to answer out loud, but how many of you, honestly, when you heard that he pushed his wife to the side and took that space on the lifeboat, really could have called him evil? Yeah. And that's what we do in this world, because everything is binary. Everything we do, we just look at it from a binary position. You know, good is the stuff of favourable character. Good is the suitable stuff, the fit, the satisfactory. Evil is morally reprehensible, it's sinful, it's wicked. In fact, the archaic word for it is inferior. It's often said that evil is the absence of good. So there we have it. We're either evil or we're good. And if we think we're good, because we don't like to think of ourselves as evil, do we? If we think we're good, then everything that doesn't fit in our realm, therefore must be evil. And we have already made a judgment. Now we know that that's not true. And we've spoken before in our small groups and in church about this hierarchy of wrongs. You know, and some things are more evil, more bad than other things in some eyes. But as the video taught us today, it is so important that when we make that immediate judgment about good versus evil, that we look at what is underneath. Because the perception is based on our understanding of things. What would you do if you were bitten by a venomous snake? Would you ask for the anti-venom? I'm guessing you would. What about if you were a vegetarian? Would you ask for the anti-venom? What about if you were a vegan? Would you ask for the anti-venom that was tested on animals in order to give you life?
Absolutely. No atheist in a foxhole.
Our understanding changes depending on our needs. Would that man have pushed his wife out of that boat if she wasn't dying? Maybe a lengthy discussion ensued and she was dying and there was only room for one person on that boat, and she knew that it was sensible for her husband, who had life left in him, to go on and raise the child. But what would that conversation have looked like if she hadn't died? If she wasn't dying, if she hadn't had that prognosis? Would they both have stayed behind and died together, leaving the child parentless? Decisions that we hear in the world, and especially this week, we label them as horrific, evil, bad, and yet sometimes there is just so much more going on. And it's hard to look at situations that we have seen this week and not think evil. People have lost their lives at the hands of 3 people. I can't even add up now how many, that there's over 40, nearly 50 people at the hands of 3 we would probably call evil people have lost their lives. More than 50, 60 have been injured. How do we not call them evil? But if we call them evil, that makes us good, because you can only be in one camp or the other, can't you? Or not. The first reading, which I'm sorry, and the second weren't on the screen. But you would have heard Mark Spencer talk about the nature of good and evil being in each of us. Each of us has good and evil. And that's a really hard thing to kind of choke on. Because I don't want to be put in the same box as the person that killed innocent people. But there is that place in each of us that unless we make healthy decisions, take us to exactly that place. Mark Spencer talks about light and dark, and I I want to use that in its truest terms because so often it's used against African American friends as puts them into it. They are bad people. I don't mean it in that space. I mean it in the light and dark, that you bring light into a situation and it reveals what is in there. And it's not always a healthy analogy, but it's one that we have used. The binary that we speak into so often, and in this church we know nothing is binary, but the world we live into speaks of that light and dark, as in good and bad. And you can look around you always to see examples of that. So for a wedding, usually it's a white dress, pure. And there are a few people. Death, black. Witches, good witches, white. Bad witches, black. Binary terms that keep our brains working in that one or the other, and it isn't like that. Spencer talks about the balance of these things living in us, and that they both feed us. Both of them feed us every single day. And hidden in us, sometimes not so hidden, are untruths, are lies, deception. The duality of life, that struggle that we have between right and wrong. And he suggests that it's the very presence of good and evil within us that helps us to form who we are. But how can we be a better person without wrestling with the good and evil within us? Eric Burden says, inside each of us there is a seed of both good and evil. It's a constant struggle as to which one will win. And one cannot exist without the other. So if we have to wrestle with ourselves, with the things within us, surely then we should be wrestling with the things that are inside other people. Because if we recognize that we don't want to be seen as binary, then we don't want others to be seen as binary either. And when we make judgments, how often can we sit back and think, just maybe there is more to this than we could have ever imagined. I know when I saw the headline of the video, when I first saw it, I just went to that place that said, why? Why would you push your wife out of that boat? I didn't even give a thought that there might be a story behind it. I went to that place. And Pope Francis says each of us has a vision of good and evil, and we have to encourage people to move towards what they think is good. Everyone has their own idea of good and evil and must choose to follow the good and fight the evil as they conceive it. He even suggests that that would be enough to make the world a better place. If the shooters this week had done battle within themselves and looked at the good and the evil of the actions that they were going to take, maybe, just maybe, they wouldn't have happened. In our reading from Mark this morning, Jesus talked about everything that comes out of us is defiled. It's not what goes in, it's what comes out. Oh, and that list is just glorious. In the King James Version, adulteries, fornications, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lasciviousness, an evil eye. And I've been accused of the evil eye before now. Blasphemy, pride, foolishness. Now, I don't know about you, but I have never imagined my foolishness as being evil, being defiled, because I just think it's something silly that I've done. You know, if I'm foolish, it's just a light-hearted, silly thing. On that hierarchy of stuff, it's down the bottom. But actually, when I start to do battle with myself, I know that the decisions that I have made me foolish. There are things that we can do to consider in each other instead of judging whether somebody is good or evil. There are things that we can do within ourselves to consider everything that we hear and consider it not in binary terms, but in individual situations. If we only sit in the good versus evil, then we have to sit in one camp or the other. And I can pretty much guarantee you that if everybody sat in the good or the evil camp, there will be somebody out there that will think you are evil. And if we don't like that thought, then why do we want to do it to others? Evil doesn't exist of itself. It is not a thing. It is not something tangible that you can pick up. It's actions, thoughts, feelings, things that defile us when they come from our bodies. And guess what? We can control it. So my challenge this morning is, what will you do? What can I do? To consider the things that are conflicting within us. Will we leave here and kind of go on our merry way and say, oh yeah, that was good. What time's tea? Or will we truly look at the things that are inside us that are conflicting? Will we consider how we look at other people? How we encounter other people and how we judge other people? So that we no longer sit in a binary world. So that we can embrace all that is happening in our world and within ourselves. There are evil acts that maim, that hurt, that kill, that ruin lives. Without a doubt. Whether it's shootings, whether it's stabbings, whether it's bombings, whether it's words, hatred, bullying. But when we can do battle with ourselves, we can make a difference.